Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the NatureCity Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Pradelli, and I'm also the CEO and co-founder of NatureCity, having started the company over 20 years ago with my wife, Beth. And since then, it's been our pleasure to have served over 500,000 Americans by offering them the best supplements we can make. Today, we're going to be talking about an ingredient that's fairly new to NatureCity, but it's generating a lot of excitement. It's the pomegranate extract called Pomonox P30. A couple of months ago, you may have seen my podcast episode where I gave you my thoughts on Pomonox P30 and all the wonderful things and ways it can help your health. But I wanted to bring in a real expert. So today we are joined from Spain by Andrea Zangara, who is the Director of Scientific Communications for Euromed. Euromed being the maker of Pomonox P30, and also one of our trusted suppliers for botanicals, particularly those from the Mediterranean region or widely used in the Mediterranean region, such as pomegranate. So, Andrea, welcome to the show, and thank you for making time for us.
Hi, Carl. Thank you very much for hosting me, and hello, everyone, and welcome to this chat.
Absolutely, and we know it's getting later in the day there, so we really appreciate you making time for us. So, Andrea, before we get into Pomonox P30 specifically, I was quite interested that the consumption and the popularity of pomegranate, particularly I think in the last 10 years, has risen dramatically, really across the world, and I think that's going to continue. I think I saw something that maybe pomegranate consumption is like almost doubled in that time frame, or maybe even greater than that. What do you, what do you think is driving that, and what's the interest among consumers with pomegranate all of a sudden?
Yes, you are absolutely correct. There is a current trend for increasing pomegranate consumption products, and this is likely related to different reasons: market, product, science, and consumers. So in terms of market, the global fruit and juice, and I have here one example. It's a beautiful, delicious pomegranate juice.
Had mine too.
Salute. It's growing, and there is more global availability of the fruit, which a few decades ago was considered exotic and difficult to find everywhere. So besides, there is an expanding use of pomegranate extracts in the nutraceutical industry. Talking about the science, there is a growing scientific backing of the properties of pomegranate, which has really spiked in the last 10 years. And we have to consider that fairly recently, the discovery of the urolithins, which are gut metabolites of the pomegranate polyphenols, the punicalagins, has also generated a lot of curiosity in the consumers, besides the scientists.
Yeah,
and the consumers are really looking for holistic solutions that are multi-pronged. They address multiple health aspects. And pomegranate is really aligned with these preferences by offering really a comprehensive health benefit. So that's what I think. And certainly the trend is projected to keep going up.
I agree, absolutely. Now, as you know, lots of fruits and vegetables, have good concentrations and variety in phytonutrients and polyphenols. Polyphenols are probably my favorite class of nutrients, I guess. What do you see as being particularly unique about pomegranate fruit that makes it so valuable to our health? And really it can help us, as your research has shown, in just so many different ways and provide so many different benefits.
Yes, absolutely. Pomegranate fruit is really a powerhouse, a nutraceutical powerhouse. And there are so many different phytonutrients which are very potent. And it's the synergy between those components that provides the benefits. But let's focus on the most bioactive components of pomegranate, which are the punicalagins, which are polyphenols in the family of the ellagic tannins. So these polyphenols have specifically high antioxidant capacities. And the ellagic tannins, the name combines ellagic acid and tannins. So it's interesting because, in fact, punicalagins are a precursor of ellagic acid.
Right.
So once ingested, punicalagins get transformed into ellagic acid, which has very strong antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, and is also slightly more bioavailable than punicalagins. Of course, to get ellagic acid, you need to have a precursor, a good amount of precursor, and the precursor is the punicalagins. Further down, and it's even is getting even more fascinating, ellagic acid is also getting transformed into through the digestion into the punicalagin, the urolitins, sorry.
Yes.
And there are specific enzymes which are in charge of this, that breaks down the ellagic acid into the urolitins. And those urolitins are possibly where the magic happens, or this is according to the most recent research. Scientists are getting really excited about the urolitins. They seems to be really rejuvenating. They are very bioactive, very bioavailable. They even cross the blood-brain barrier, apparently. So they provide direct rejuvenation in the brain, and also indirectly, because by improving the gut, which is where they are formed. So locally, they also have prebiotics effects and normalizing effects on the endothelium of the gut. And this has a direct connection with the brain, with the gut-brain axis. So there is really something special about pomegranate, and this is testified by the role probably of pomegranates in history, in culture, in traditional medicine and cuisine. So things that really are quite different, quite unique.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, I know Euromed has invested what has to be millions of dollars in scientific research with Pomonox P30, and we want to get some of those specific benefits and findings in a moment. But first, just like to get into, for the viewers and the listeners, how you go about making the Pomonox P30 powder itself. In my experience, companies, they won't invest in clinical trials, which are very, very expensive, unless they know they have a high quality, superior ingredient. So what can you tell us about, where the fruit comes from, how you approach the supply chain, and, really how you capture the potency to make Pomonox P30, all the great punicalagins and ellagic acid, all the great things you referred to, if you may.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let me give you a little bit of background.
Uh-huh.
In 2017, we acquired a state-of-the-art facility in southern Spain, which was developed by a company called Probelte Bio, which we acquired, and Pomonox came with the acquisition. So the guys at Probelte started nearly 20 years ago the research on the properties of the Mediterranean diet, and they came up with identifying particularly in a pomegranate, and also in the olive. Of course, olive oil has a direct connection with the beauties of the Mediterranean diet properties. So they started to investigate how to make the most of pomegranates, which were also growing locally. So the idea was to do something with what was around. And the answer was pomegranates and water. So they really had this great idea of developing a patented procedure to extract the essential goods, which we'll probably see a little bit in later. But since now you ask me about the supply chain, well, it's important to note that this facility is built right in the middle of the orchards. So this facilitates the control of the supply chain, which obviously, as you know, Euromed does since 1971. So we are vertically integrated. We check all the steps of the supply chain. And with pomegranate, we do exactly the same. The farmers which some of those are also certified organic. They have very good relationships with Euromed, so we know them. They provide us the specific quality that we want. Actually, in that region, there are the two best pomegranate species in the world, so that's even more facilitating. And the region is also very famous for the quality of all the fruit and vegetables grown there. Half of the world's fruit juices come from there.
Wow, that's interesting.
Correct.
And that's like the, I guess that'd be the southeastern part of Spain?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, which interestingly originally was a desertic area, and then with a lot of intelligence and entrepreneurship, they developed a system to irrigate this land and transform it into what is now called the Garden of Europe. So it's very interesting. So we, of course, the supply chain is checked. We have specific directive in order to select the fruits. The fruits have to be double-checked visually as well when they reach our factory. And then they go through the water extraction method. This is a patented extraction procedure that is not using any other chemicals than pure water. So this is quite unique. It helps to preserve the fruit benefits. In fact, we use the whole fruit because really the punicalagins and other polyphenols, flavonoids, are within the fruits everywhere. So we want to get the most out of nature, and that's why we use whole fresh fruits. So those fresh fruits are then chopped. They are milled into demineralized water, and then they go through purification procedure. Why demineralized water? Because minerals can actually interfere with the gut metabolism of the punicalagins, and also they can oxidize polyphenols.
Interesting.
So by removing those minerals, we get a very powerful natural method to get the best out of the fruit without contaminants, without non-water soluble compounds. In this case, we are very concerned about some potentially neurotoxic alkaloids that are actually potentially extracted from the fruit when the fruit is treated with ethanol or acetone. So it's also very safe. So yes, we ensure what is more closely resembling to nature.
That's great. So if I heard it correctly, you demineralize the water. Is that correct? So it's not as part of purification process?
Yes, correct. That's why it's called ultra pure water.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd never heard that about the minerals and the potential.
Yeah, there is actually a recent study where it's unrelated to us, where the researchers brewed different polyphenol sources like tea leaves. They brew it with different waters, commercial waters, with different mineralization, and they found out that the result was more polyphenols, so more yield of polyphenols when the water was less mineralized. And interestingly, the polyphenols had also more antioxidant power when the raw material was treated with demineralized water. So that's an intriguing explanation to validate our model.
No, that's really, really interesting. And listen, we love that you use the entire fruit to make Pomonox P30. I mean, not only just for sustainability and environmental purposes, but, we want to ingest what nature made, right? And, it's there for a reason. So we really like that. Obviously pomegranate ingredients in the nutraceutical, the dietary supplement industry, are growing as pomegranate grows in popularity. Do most, or I should say, many of the other, more generic pomegranate powders, are they not using the entire fruit in your experience?
Yes, the majority are not using the entire fruit. So our approach really captures the full spectrum of the beneficial compounds, particularly the punicalagins, but all the other water-soluble beneficial compounds that really act synergistically. By using these, we can really provide the holistic properties that nature intended. Whilst if you get something different, there may be higher levels of some compounds versus lower level than others. It's not balanced. So what we want, it's a safe, potent, but balanced extract. In this case, that ensures a minimum of 30% punicalagins, as in the fruit juice, for example.
And it's not only the percentage, but antioxidant power that those, the resulting power has, right? It's not, it's more than just about the percentage, I presume.
Absolutely. That's why, it's difficult to express this, but you got it. Absolutely. It's the whole amount of different compounds. You talk about flavonoid, anthocyanins, the different polyphenols. So it's really a comprehensive representation of what's in the fruit.
Yeah.
And the 30%, it's basically a reference. But of course, it's important also because we can provide tailored extract with different concentration of punicalagins. But the P30 is the reference that has been used more in the clinical studies.
Absolutely, yeah. And we really, a lot of viewers are probably tired of hearing me say this, but the way these nutrients work, it's more like an orchestra, right? Musical terms than like a solo performer, right? So you want all these nutrients that support each other and work together. Is the way we think about it.
Yes, and when they are all together, the symphony is coming out. Then you may have a leading instrument having a role in a moment, and another one having a role in another. It's the beauty of natural products and plants that contains so many bioactive that can target our intricate and complex physiology.
Perfectly said. Thank you very much for that.
Pleasure.
So let's discuss some of the science and benefits, of which there are many, that you've observed with your scientific research with the Pomonox P30, starting with cardiovascular health. I know you've done multiple studies involving individuals with already healthy blood pressure, already in a normal range, and it really showed that Pomonox P30 really can even not only help you maintain those healthy levels, but it could be beneficial in even optimizing those blood pressure levels even more. Did you find that the Pomonox P30 helps support both systolic and diastolic blood pressure readings? And, maybe you talk a little bit about how you think it works.
Yes, absolutely. We have 4 clinical studies looking at cardiovascular health, and particularly, as you mentioned, blood pressure, systolic and diastolic. And they are in healthy people. And however, which is obviously harder to do any sort of physiological impact on already healthy people. However, when we talk about blood pressure, we need to consider that even healthy people may have a subclinical disturbances of blood pressure. And in fact, in at least one of the studies, we can see that the basal pressure was within the norm, but slightly high. So this can be due, as I said, to some subclinical issues, which are really important from a prevention perspective. They should be checked. Unfortunately, these people, if they go to a doctor, they're not flagged as potentially problematic. So that's another aspect. And then also this sort of white coat effect. So people in the labs tended to have slightly higher blood pressure because they getting a little bit anxious of being in a medical environment. So even in these conditions, Pomonox really appear to have an effect in optimizing blood pressure, both the diastolic and systolic, which are both important, fundamental for cardiovascular health. Probably the systolic pressure is given more importance because it's associated more with vascular health. And in fact, in at least one of the studies with Pomonox, systolic blood pressure was more impacted by the product. So what is the potential explanation? There are several. The most well represented by research is the stimulation by the punicalagins, the promotion of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a molecule, is a gas that instructs blood vessels to contract or dilate. And this really, of course, has a great impact on vascular health and blood pressure. So nitric oxide, unfortunately, tends to reduce with age. So it's important to have something natural that can still help with the various processes that leads to a healthy blood pressure.
Sure.
So this is potentially one of the key mechanisms of action regarding blood pressure, which impact a lot of other functions that are related with vascular health.
Absolutely. I mean, promoting nitric oxide is so important just for, I guess helping those blood vessels relax so blood can flow a little easier. It was interesting when I was looking at the research that one of the things you pointed to also was Pomonox P30 seemed to have a beneficial effect on cortisol, which is, known as the stress hormone. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct, and it's really fascinating. Cortisol, it's the stress hormone. It's called the stress hormone. It's fundamental. It helps us in our life. It prepares us to fight or flight, the so-called reaction to stressful situation. But when cortisol is at excessive levels, then this can lead to different issues, particularly stress, anxiety, blood pressure issues, but also loss of muscle mass, frailty, increased appetite, increased abdominal fat. So quite a lot of things that actually are research on Pomanox tells us that are improved with Pomanox. So they may be related. How the researchers got to this conclusion, they one of the research center in England, which is specialized in cardiovascular and endocrinology, they always put the cortisol measurement, which cortisol is a circadian rhythm, so it follows a specific pattern. And what they noticed after Pomanox intake was that not only the cortisol level was reduced, but also the relationship between cortisol and cortisone was reduced. And this is really intriguing because this means that an enzyme called 11-beta HSD1, which transforms inactive cortisone to active cortisol, it's inhibited. So by inhibiting this enzyme, obviously to physiological levels, you have less cortisol circulating, and therefore Pomanox properties may be related to the inhibition of this enzyme. This is possibly how the cortisol connection works.
That's really, really interesting. I had not heard that described, either with other botanicals that may help maintain healthy cortisol levels. I mean, like everything else in the body, cortisol has a role, but when it gets elevated, that's when it becomes, can become problematic. So,
absolutely. For sports nutrition, cognitive performance, I mean, cortisol is catabolic, so it's the opposite of anabolic. So you don't want that if you are training or doing bodybuilding or just, being a weekend warrior at the gym.
Or just trying to fall asleep, get healthy, nice sleep, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
So, Andrea, how else? Look, we already made a great case for why we should be taking Pomonox P30, but how else have you seen that Pomonox P30 may support cardiovascular health?
Well, certainly one explanation with botanicals is never enough, and it's worthy to explore further. So certainly the nitric oxide explanation provides a very good approach, but also, as I said, the cortisol and excessive cortisol really impacts our cardiovascular system first, because being stressed doesn't help our heart. And second, because cortisol induces directly hypertension. Then, the fact that there is a direct improvement of vascular functions. So the endothelium, which is the inner layer of the capillaries, but specifically of the arteries, it's definitely improved through the antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and nitric oxide boosting properties of the product. And there is a very nice animal study on this by Professor Villahour in Cardiovascular Center in Barcelona, which really explained the mechanistic very well. And they identified those three key mechanisms of action. Actually, not the cortisol one. The cortisol comes from further research.
Interesting. Now it's the endothelium health is again something else that's really been emerging in the last 10, 15 years, and certainly polyphenols can play an important role in that, and the pomegranate punicalagins, it sounds like, can play an important role in that. So switching to another area that I think you've done a fair amount of work in is brain health, which is an area of particular interest among many supplement users these days, for different reasons. I mean, you have your folks, over 50 like me who are, starting to feel the effects of, our age and need some help, support for, just cognitive function and maintaining, healthy, maintaining brain health. And then you have even, some younger adults who, maybe are, feeling, challenges. It seems like every week now, every month, we have a different reason to be stressed or worry about things. And, some of the younger folks maybe need more help with supporting, their ability to cope with stress or moods or whatever. And then, I think we're all just interested in being able to maintain, sharp focus and cognitive performance throughout the day. So, a lot of different aspects when it comes to brain health. What specifically, how may Pomonox P30 be helpful?
Yes, I mean, certainly brain functions is a great interest and is increasingly demanded by consumers, something that works to sustain, support, enhance, protect. And, this is also my research field, so where I have my academic background. So I find it absolutely very exciting. And that's my first job in UK was a cognitive drug research. Then I moved on to research, the cognitive properties of botanicals in a university.
Great.
So for me, it's also very exciting. And
excellent.
And plants really have the potential key to interact with the multifaceted aspects of our brain health, which is probably the most complex of our functions. We use the brain every day, but it's the organ in our body we know the less. So we really don't understand how exactly memory works, where memories are located. So it's an area that really is fascinating. And so there are several potential mechanisms of action for pomegranate, Pomonox, to interact with the brain. First one is certainly the antioxidant. The brain is producing a fair amount of oxidative stress. It works very hard. It needs a lot of oxygen, lots of sugar. And first it needs to be cleaned by a good amount of antioxidant, and then it really needs a good support of nutrients. So vascular properties are fundamental here: blood support, nitric oxide, and vascular functions, but also potentially the cortisol link, and potentially neurotransmitter influenced by the product. We are not sure. But a raising issue or a raising perspective is the urolithins I mentioned before.
Yes.
Those gut metabolites really appear to be able to cross the blood-brain barrier, which is not an easy task.
Yes.
For a compound. So it seems that when they get to the brain tissue, that's where they can provide rejuvenating properties, and the research is ongoing. Now, to see any direct evidence with Pomonox, we have a pilot study with 20 healthy adults that completed a computerized cognitive assessment before Pomonox and after. So this was an acute study, not a chronic. In only 1 hour, Pomonox was actually able to produce remarkable improvement in different facets of cognition: executive functions, working memory, cognitive demand, episodic memory. So this function really include mental agility, planning, and for the long-term memory, really the ability to record events for later use, which is fundamental for cognitive task, but also for our independence in the older age.
Absolutely. No, so I mean, it sounds like, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were about to say?
No, I was just saying that based on these good results, we are currently doing a chronic study So you might like this news. So we will see the results in the time frame that takes to do a nice clinical study on elderly people.
Yeah, it'd be wonderful if you can couple the, as you say, the acute short-term effect of maybe helping, be a little more alert and focused, to complete your daily activities, and you couple that with some longer-term, protection, in terms of your brain health as you age. I mean, that's really a winner. So we'll be excited. We'll have to have you back when you complete that work. Sounds very exciting.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the acute study, it's a very good proof of concept. That's why we used a quite large dose of the extract, which is still very safe and could be used on demand, perhaps, when you have to prepare for an exam and it really improved the reaction time. For example, that means more alertness, which is what you want on a short term as well.
Absolutely. And given the effects of Pomonox P30 in terms of helping keep cortisol, in check, and did you see any evidence of better moods that you often see with that?
Yes, there is a study which indicates the cortisol regulation level and also indicates different health properties, protection properties within the same study, including an improvement on the quality of life scores, which is obviously includes also mood. So the volunteers reported having better physical functioning, social functioning, less pain, a general health improvement, and an overall quality of life improvement. So that's certainly a measure of our mood.
Excellent. So we talked about the heart, we talked about the brain, cardiovascular system. This next area really surprised me, but I think it's so interesting, especially for a lot of our consumers. When you studied, actually studied, I guess I'd call it hair health, and specifically Pomonox P30's ability to help maybe improve hair thickness and strength, and even, help reduce, kind of normal age-related hair loss. Can you tell us more about this? Because, again, it's pretty unique.
Yes, indeed. It was just really a pilot study, but it really makes sense if we consider the properties of Pomonox in general. And actually is an area we are planning to investigate clinically further with something more, more solid.
Sure.
However, the results are quite striking because, as you said, there was an increase in hair density, thickness. There was a higher proportion of hair in the growth phase versus the fall or resting phase.
Yes.
So one possible explanation of what we observed in this study could relate to dihydrotestosterone, which is a hormone associated with our hair health. And it's actually, when it binds to the receptor in the follicles, it generates irritation. So the anti-inflammatory properties of Pomonox, possibly they sort of improve the health of the hair follicles and protect them from potential stressors, which could be oxidative stress, inflammatory inflammation from age process, from hormones or different things.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the nitric oxide, because the scalp need to be oxygenated, need to be nourished, and we need vasodilation also in the scalp. So by ensuring the hair follicles receive constant supply of nutrients, then we may suppose that there is a better hair growth. So again, it's really a multi-pronged approach to this aspect.
Sure. And did that pilot study, was that both men and women involved in that? Or?
It was only men.
It was only men. Okay.
Yes.
That's where the DHT might be more applicable there.
Indeed, but it's also something happening in women. But in any case, now we are planning a study in men and women to understand more about this.
Excellent. And I don't think you've done any clinical studies yet with skin. Is that an area you're looking to invest in as well? Because it sounds like Pomonox may be able to help skin, the appearance of skin also.
Yes, it's an area very promising where we are investing quite substantial resources. Currently, there is an ongoing trial on skin health in humans.
Oh, great.
And how did we get to this? Through an in vitro study that was really promising. So this in vitro study showed a lot of different skin beauty related properties, and which showed that Pomonox may improve the skin tone, the skin elasticity, skin hydration, and skin protection from photoaging.
Sure.
So just to make it short, there was an inhibition of the tyrosinase enzyme, which is an enzyme that generates more melanin. So by inhibiting this enzyme, you would expect a less hyperpigmented skin or a protection from, excessive sun exposure, together with, obviously, with sun protection that is fundamental. And then what was also very interesting is that the level of skin components like collagen and hyaluronic acid, the metabolism of these two components was improved by Pomonox dilution in the skin tissues, not only in neutral condition, but also after exposure to UVA. So it really seems that there is a sort of protective or preparing effect that lasts longer on these fundamental skin components. So that's really interesting, and this in vitro study already generated a lot of attention in the market because it's actually quite powerful.
Absolutely. No, I look forward to seeing the results of the additional work that's ongoing. That sounds wonderful. So I know one other area that Euromed has invested in significant resources with respect to Pomonox P30 is in the sports nutrition area, helping with endurance, recovery. What are you seeing with this research?
Yes, we performed a study on cyclists, and they were trained cyclists. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because what we wanted to see if that an athlete can go the extra mile with Pomonox, which if then it's confirmed, it can obviously be transferred to normal people as well. So to demonstrate this proof of concept, trained cyclists were used, that they were administered Pomonox for 2 weeks, and Pomonox really had an impact on performance outcomes. So the most significant outcome was the improvement in peak performance, but also in force restoration. So there was, for example, a significant increase in time to exhaustion, time to reach the moment where you cannot do any more efforts, and in time to reach what is called the ventilatory threshold 2, which indicates the ability to prolong exercise at a high intensity. And we are not talking about trivial improvements. I mean, the increased on time to reach ventilatory threshold 2 was 55 seconds, and the improvement to reach exhaustion was 94 seconds, 14%.
Wow.
So in a competitive environment, although seconds seems very small and short time, but they can make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 14%. I'm sure people were pretty excited when they saw that. That's pretty significant.
It is. It's impressive. And again, it could be explained by nitric oxide, antioxidant, other molecular pathways that are going on with mitochondrial energy and so on. But it's difficult to assess them all with a natural product. But what we can assess is the efficacy first. And this is what we did with the trial that you just mentioned.
Have you had a chance also to look at the effect of Pomonox P30 on muscle recovery?
Yes, thank you for reminding me, because in this same study, the researchers also checked the markers of inflammation, which are an example or indicate muscle damage and muscle recovery. So in this case, the researcher identified 2 inflammatory markers that are relevant to muscle recovery, which were not incredibly lower. You don't want that,
right?
Because inflammation is also something that is needed up to some level for the muscle to recover and not just to be inhibited. So we saw a trend for these inflammatory indicators, which really get on well with the holistic properties within sport performances.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you made that point of inflammation, because I say that too. I mean, inflation gets us reputation as a bad guy sometimes, right? But we would die if we didn't have a normal inflammation response, right?
It's a fundamental process, yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So last area I just wanted to touch base on with respect to research is the work you've done in weight management. I think notably how Pomonox P30 may help increase satiety. Why is satiety important in your view, and what did your research show?
That's right. Satiety, the study was published very recently. It was a pilot study, but extremely fascinating. And satiety, it's a crucial factor in weight management, of course. So when we feel satisfied after a meal, we have no cravings, so we don't have the urge to snack. And ultimately, we control calories intake and portion sizes. We can, if we are satiated, is that a correct English word?
Satiated.
Satiated.
Yes.
It's also easier to stick to diets. So because of course, it's you can control your weight management without having any risk or reducing your risk to break the diet. And so what we saw in one study was definitely an improvement in satiety. So the subjects who took Pomonox were more, they had less hunger, and they reported more satisfaction after a satiety session, which consisted in eating a measured amount of food in the lab. Moreover, because those are subjective measures, the volunteers have to tick a line indicating themselves how they felt.
Yes.
Which is important. However, this was also confirmed by the weight of the amount of food they consumed. So the weight of the amount of food that people taking Pomonox versus placebo consumed was significantly less. And this is an objective measure. So it's a confirmation, most likely, that really there is an effect on satiety. In the bigger picture of weight management, this is also confirmed or supported by another study where intake of Pomonox led to a reduction in body fat percentage and increase in lean body mass. So, of course, positive changes in body composition and satiety are really important for weight management. So
absolutely. And just to clarify, in the study, did people take the Pomonox P30 prior to the meal or with the meal, or how was that done?
There was a sort of priming phase where the subject took the compound, I'm not 100% sure, I believe a week before. But during the meal, they were administered a glass of pomegranate juice to see if there was a differential effect on the acute administration of a glass of pomegranate with, of course, more polyphenols. This was not the case. So the effect was mostly or fully related to the previous intake of Pomonox.
Interesting. Well, this has been great and fascinating, Andrea, so thank you so much. But before we wrap up,
pleasure.
Is there anything else you'd like the audience to know about Pomonox P30?
Well, as I said, we are investing a lot of resources because we believe in the product. So we have 4 clinical trials ongoing, several others planned, different in vitro master project. We support the PhD course. So there will be a lot of things if you stay tuned, and exciting news on this to support our good partners like NatureCity. And we really like your approach to use Pomonox in a combination with other polyphenols. This is really smart. And we did notice in a specific big trial combining Pomonox with Medianox, so another polyphenol source, that there was a synergistic effect on different health perspectives. So really great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. That's very kind. Well, this has been, like I said, this has been wonderful, and we look forward to having you back as the science evolves with Pomonox P30, because I think there's going to be a lot more interesting revelations. And, for those listening or watching, we do include Pomonox P30 in our Trueberry 7 drink powder, which, as Andrea alluded to, has not only the Pomonox P30, which alone would be a great product, but 6 other superfood extracts that also have great scientific substantiation, and that can really help support your body in many, many different ways. So check out Trueberry 7 at NatureCity.com. Each serving has 350 milligrams of Pomonox P30. To get the most, I recommend taking 2 servings a day. It'll give you only 700 milligrams of the Pomonox P30, which is roughly about what has been used in much of the research I think we discussed today. But also, you get the other great, just a great abundance of polyphenols from different sources. Again, polyphenols are my favorite nutrient class because they can help us in so many different ways. But you want to get, just like eating a healthy diet involves many different fruits, vegetables, and so on, you like to get that in your supplements too. So that's why we formulate Trueberry 7 as we did. So folks, thank you for tuning in. If you liked the show, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also find us on your favorite streaming services. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and some others. So Andre, thank you so much. This has been terrific.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So I'm Carl Pradelli, and we will see you next week.